Horror movies hide far more under their bloody trappings than they'd care to admit, and one layer often isn't enough to please rabid fans that love to go searching for the truth. I am the shallow Ash from What Culture, and these are 8 horror movies with deeper meanings than you realise. 8. Normal is relative. Raw. The representations in Raw mirror that of any bloody gorefest focusing on women. The horrors of growing up. Puberty is a scary thing, and with it comes all the blood, hair, and sexual liberation a young girl could wish for in a lifetime. Then a dollop more for good luck. Raw's embrace of these bodily changes comes through loud and clear, and like in Carrie and Ginger Snaps and all those other monstrous women in cinema, Justine is left stronger, stranger, and sexually awakened by her mysterious affliction of cannibalism. But that is not all that director Julia Ducournau was going for. Ducournau has stated that she wanted to create a scenario that makes watchers consider what they are seeing and how it relates to our own perception of normality. How cannibalism might seem like this grand, terrifying statement, but in actuality, it's an average part of cultures across many other parts of the world. And I quote, "I thought it was very funny how people tend to qualify as monstrous or inhuman deeds that are actually very human. Cannibalism is a part of humanity. Some tribes do it ritually and have no shame doing it. It's perhaps best encompassed by equipping 'this thing is in us, we just don't want to see it.' Raw is this acceptance of the horrifying as a part of subjective human nature, something we fold into ourselves and carry on as normal. Identity is purely relative. 7. The house is a Freudian nightmare. Psycho. Any film student worth their relish will be able to tell you countless representations you can find all over Alfred Hitchcock's seminal horror Psycho. Norman Bates's taxidermy birds are predatory symbols giving away his true intent, the mirrors that continually surround Marion are a reflection of her duplicitous nature, and even the choice of paintings in the background double down on the voyeuristic pastimes. Susanna and the Elders, a particular indicator that tells the story of men who watch a woman bathe without her knowing. So it comes as no surprise that I have got one more for you right here. Apparently, it's very important that Norman Bates's grand house has 3 floors, as each one is a representation of Sigmund Freud's idea of psyche. That would be superego on the top floor, which is where his mother lived and controls his moral choices as a voice in his head, ego in the middle, where Norman attempts to wrestle between his split personality, and id on the bottom, the primitive part of the mind that Norman's dead mother now resides in and takes over as instinct in the end. Hitchcock was a master of sneaking in ridiculous detail to all parts of his movies. So this is just another lovely tier to an endless layer cake he has cooked up for us in the process. 6. An artist's wet dream. Velvet Buzzsaw. Whilst Velvet Buzzsaw is an unashamed satire about art and its consumption, there is another layer that is often overlooked in the movie's construction. The film focuses on a group of art critics that discover masterpieces by an unknown painter, now deceased and ready to haunt the crap out of anyone that sells his work without his permission. That doesn't scare high society, of course, and they start dishing out the pieces for a healthy chunk of profit before art starts coming to life all around them and tearing them apart in increasingly inventive ways. Director Dan Gilroy does a fine job of ragging on those that make art and its critique their lives. But Noah Balatsky of The Verge makes a fine retort. It's also a world in which artists are endlessly relevant in a positive light, loved wholly, and have a strange sense of hope for their place which is so often desperately reached for by those struggling. It's a film that celebrates modern art and gives artists a place where they are all-powerful, as much as it derails those ideas as well. It seems ironic that what many artists would kill to have, fame, money, adoration, one particular ghostly figure kills for having, actively trying to dim his legacy in an environment where others would have your arm off, again a turn of phrase used quite literally, to get anywhere near his success. 5. The atomic bomb to nature's cure-all. Godzilla. Godzilla isn't an out-and-out horror character, but his monster movie leanings are absolutely a part of the backbone of the horror genre, as are the early movies. And really, he has always represented something deeper than a big old lizard man from under the sea. Whilst Godzilla movies are giant celebratory monster mashes that see him face off against the strangest and most gigantic of foes, he has always had his own widespread interpretation as well. That of the atomic bomb. Godzilla directly reflected the anxieties of the country about the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II, rising from the deep after being disturbed by bombings himself. Over the years, he has developed into a heroic protector of the country as much as its destroyer, changing the context of what the monster really is. Godzilla, in his most recent outing, is the one thing that stands between humanity and extinction, empowered by nuclear devices to serve as the frontline defense from giant monsters. He has gone from a powerful creature of destruction born from man-made interference to being nature's own answer to killing off that which threatens Earth's balance, a representation that life finds a way that Jurassic Park would be envious of. Godzilla is the apocalypse, the end and the beginning all in one. 4. Divorce, children, and autobiography. The Brood. It has long been considered that David Cronenberg's The Fly is a representation of the fear of aging and decay, as well as a metaphor for AIDS and disease taking toll on a body. But far less discussed is his earlier work, The Brood, telling the tale of a woman, Nola, that undergoes a strange psychological technique to deal with her repressed emotions. A series of murders plays out in tandem with her treatment, with the film climaxing in the reveal that physically realised spawns of her rage have grown from the sessions and attack anyone that has wronged her. With all that going on, it is pretty easy to overlook the child custody battle happening in the middle. Nola and her husband's experiences are Cronenberg's own then recent custody battle brought to life on screen, an outlet in the same vein as Nola's own strange creatures born from her emotional conflict. The Brood is Cronenberg's own tiny murderous monster thrown out into the world. It's a rumination on the difficulties of trying to do the best for a child that might be taken to an environment that isn't safe. One of Cronenberg's fears when sorting the situation out in his own life. The Brood is way more autobiographical than you'd think for this level of horror movie, with Nola even based on his own ex-wife to boot. 3. Womanly Witchcraft. The Neon Demon. It's not so much the meaning of the neon demon that eludes an audience, but the story itself. Since director Nicholas Winding Refn does his best to make something both beautiful and elusive with his comment on the dark underbelly of the fashion industry. Wrapped up in shiny lights and distracting makeup is a tale of witchcraft, however. One that isn't easily seen on the surface thanks to its glossy exterior. They slowly groom her for her enviable youth and beauty, before eventually killing and eating her in a ritualistic practice. It's not so clear to begin with, but becomes apparent as the story unfolds, with each conversation pertaining to how the three women will use Jessie, for food or for sex. Their obsession with her is a mesmerism with Jessie's innate power that they wish to imbibe themselves with. Jessie herself is the representation of the pitfalls of ego, letting her narcissism fuel her to the point of her own downfall, with the myth of Narcissus driving Refn's portrayal of his character from innocent to self-obsessed. The blue triangle scene sees Jessie in her own warped depiction of falling in love with her own reflection, as Narcissus did when looking into a pond and finding his own face staring back. It is ultimately the tale of the darker empowerment women can tap into, valuing appearance above all else and devouring each other to get to the top. 2. Down the Rabbit Hole. Us. Us is full of different readings that run across its crazy storyline. Seeing a bunch of doppelgangers rise from their home in the underground and kill those on the surface, Adelaide Wilson and her family must try to survive and learn the truth of what their doubled, tethered beings are. Effectively another version of themselves created through a government cloning program that they share a soul with. Director Jordan Peele does his darndest to pack the movie full of imagery and representation that isn't obvious on first watch. And whilst the plot of Hands Across America becomes clear by the end, there's also recurring rabbit motifs that serve to reinforce Peele's vision. Whether it's the opening shot of caged rabbits, a stuffed toy, a jumper with the Vietnamese word for rabbit on, or actual real-life animals, they are all over. Apparently, they're a food source for the tethered, but they also serve to represent the test animals that the underground society are treated as well as their collective, winding human burrow under the surface. Of course, Alice in Wonderland also takes a trip down the rabbit hole to a strange new world, just as the tethered come out of one to terrorize those above. Peele says it best himself. They're an animal of duality. They're adorable, but they terrify me at the same time. And they've got those scissor-like ears that creep me out. 1. It's a riff on Greek mythology and masculinity. The Lighthouse. Now, I'm not claiming anyone didn't realise there was a deeper meaning to The Lighthouse, considering just how maddeningly cryptic most of its narrative is. Entwining two lighthouse keepers around a bare-bones story that feels more experienced than it does actual movie, The Lighthouse is a dizzying combination of grotty wanks, hilarious insults, and seagull smashing like nothing else you'll see. And in the process, it hides its true motivations under a thick layer of salt and seawater. Director Robert Eggers has continually reinforced that he designed the movie to be open to interpretation, but there are parallels that inspired the piece as a whole, namely Greek mythology surrounding Proteus and Prometheus. Prometheus, just as Ephraim Winslow does by witnessing the light in all of its glory at the end of the film, stole fire from the gods, only to be punished by birds picking out his insides. Eerily familiar, right? And Proteus is a shape-shifting sea god who is brother to Triton and son to Poseidon. The very fellas our grizzled, sea-worn man in charge, Thomas Wake, calls upon to curse Ephraim in a fit of rage when his cooking is questioned. The whole piece feels like a rumination on masculinity. So to throw these two highly charged masculine characters from legend together to see what madness they can inflict on each other in Eggers' choice setting, that of a giant phallus, seems fitting. And that's our list. What other horror movies are unexpectedly deep? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. I've been Ash and this has been What Culture. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and come back again soon for some more spine-tingling horror content. Thanks for watching.